We're talking about mental health and the ways agri-therapy can help farmers battle stress and anxiety, particularly if you heard part of the press conference today. You know the climate crisis is really important, and there's an intersection with that and mental health, and that's some of what we're going to be covering today. So let's start with a little bit of context, and I'll start with you, Lori. So as a hotline operator for Farm Aid, you answer the phone when farmers call in crisis. Can you tell me what those farmers are calling about?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. It changes, with seasons and with the years, but the consistent messages, the consistent calls in the last year at least have been having to do mostly with high input costs. So the costs for all the items that the farmers need to purchase to work are going up, but that doesn't mean that they're actually getting more money for their goods on the other side. And COVID hit farmers really hard, so that was a big issue for a long time. And now that we're coming off of that, a lot of drought calls. I think 42 states are in moderate drought or higher this week. So that is just a consistent message from our farmers. It's dealing with culling their herds because they don't have enough hay, wells going dry, letting fields go fallow because they don't have irrigation. So that's a big challenge. Yeah.
And when a farmer calls the hotline and that is what they're stressed about, or that's what is really eating away at them, I mean, what are some of the feelings that they're going through? Like, are they saying they feel hopeless? Are they saying they feel like no one's supporting them?
Yeah, it's interesting because this panel is about climate change and I'm blanking. Climate change and mental health, sorry. And the two are just so intertwined because folks will call sometimes voicing mental health concerns as their first driving reason for calling, but not as often as these other things. But the mental health aspect is so often there. I mean, it's incredibly stressful. They've been dealing with so many issues for so many years, and now on top of that, we are hitting things like climate change, hurricanes, floods, wildfires, and the infrastructure isn't there yet to support that. So even though it's not blatantly a mental health call, it's pretty much always there. Yeah.
Marvin, you are a farmer. I'm sure you are dealing with some of these impacts. What is that like when you're standing there and realize that it's climate, right? It's not something that you can just fix. What goes through your head?
That is a great question. One of the main things that goes through my head is, how do I find the yes? It is very hard to deal with something that you're struggling about that you can't really fix at that particular moment. For myself, I lost a lot of cattle due to climate change this year, due to heat. And that was the most hardest thing to do because I look at my cattle as my friends, and I feel as if I failed them. And now my new thing is trying to find a better resource and adjust to what we're going through now.
Earlier, before we came out here to talk with all of you, you were talking about how your own experiences might help someone else. And I wonder, I'm sure there are people in this audience who are facing similar challenges with the impacts of climate change on their own farms. What are some of the things that you do to keep yourself going that maybe someone in this audience could try that might help them as well?
You guys are going to laugh at this, but I'm a big fan of YouTube University. So for me to stay on top of the know, to stay on top of what's going on, I want to see what other farmers around the world are doing. So I'm a YouTube University graduate. So I love to learn about what's going on out there, how they're moving water around in a dry area. Whatever I can do to improve that portion is how I handle it.
And YouTube University is free, right? Because it's just going on YouTube and looking stuff up, right?
That's absolutely right. That's absolutely right. And a lot of farmers are putting that out there for us to learn that too as well.
I think that's so interesting, not to sidetrack too much, but it almost seems like you are able to find a community online with YouTube of other people sharing their experiences, kind of helping you through your own experiences, right?
That's absolutely correct. Believe it or not, the side B to that is finding the yes to that, is finding resources from where we could find someone that's dealing with something or has extra resources it's more than enough for them, but it's a great start for you. And resources are what can help us out, which can help us get past grants for that year that we're starting with something, or at that time to get us through a hard time. So resources is my best answer for that.
So what's so interesting, I think, about this conversation is that on the one hand, we have farmers calling because the climate crisis is really affecting their farm and that affects their mental health. But on the other hand, we also know that farming can actually save people because it is a form of therapy, and it's called agri-therapy. And I'm sure maybe some of you have experienced this when you're working with the soil or you're working on your farm and you feel better maybe at the end of the day. Can you, Marvin, explain to us what agri-therapy is like? Because I know you have lived experience and farming has helped you a lot.
Absolutely. The term agri-therapy is just it's a term of putting two words together, of agriculture and therapy at the same time. Using nature, using the resources of what we have outside. I'll give you an example. Fresh air is acknowledgement that we're still alive. Hearing the birds singing again, also another type of acknowledgement. Or being with our animals, talking with our animals, being next to our animals is a form of way of saying that our animals don't judge us for what we've been through. So it's a great start, great spot in your location of what agri-therapy is. It's a way of help.
When we think about the folks who are calling the hotline, right, because they're in crisis, it sounds like from what Marvin is saying, community is a really important part of supporting other farmers, right? Whether it's an online community or it's your physical community around you, how do you help someone who maybe is feeling hopeless or alone in that moment to sort of realize that they're not alone, that they have a community?
Sure. Yeah, good question. I think part of it starts on the other end of trying to avoid getting to that point in the first place. So a lot of the work that we're doing, both through the hotline and some other projects that Farm Aid is coordinating with, is working with farmers intensively in terms of building that safety net, that community, deciding who they're going to go to if they need trouble. So that's already in their mind. It's kind of front of mind if they start to really struggle with it. And then certainly if we're getting calls from farmers on the hotline, we've got lots of resources. Some of them are peer support networks of different types, or even hyper-local groups that they can find through folks we can refer them to. So I think it's both. It's coming at it in preventative terms and addressing the issue when it arises. Yeah.
So I'm not trying to put the two of you on the spot, but something that I think might help folks is when it's time to seek help. Like, when is that moment? And we were talking about this backstage a little bit of like, when do you reach that point where you're like, you know what, I actually do think I need to call someone, or maybe I need to reach out to a friend and say, I need to lean on you. How do you, if you don't mind, what was that aha moment for you, or Allison, that aha moment for you, and what should people take away from that?
I can speak to my experience. I think that we're all going through a vast amount of trauma over the last few years, and we're all suffering a bit of a mental health crisis to varying degrees, is what I have observed and what I've felt and I've been moving through the world now, for about 200 days on the road. With some, I actually had to cancel almost 2 weeks of shows because I had a vocal hemorrhage. But I think the vocal hemorrhage was really triggered by a mental health crisis, where I was so stressed out that I wasn't able to sleep. I couldn't sleep for almost a month. And that had a physical ramification because as singers, of course, our instrument is our body. Our vocal cords are a muscle and they're part of our bodies. And so my kind of worsening, but the mental health crisis I was ignoring and telling myself I'm fine, I can get through things, I'm doing the work, I'm fine, but not sleeping and kind of unraveling really more and more mentally, till finally there was a physical manifestation of a vocal hemorrhage where it was like my body said stop. And unfortunately, I have, because of, my background, my childhood, I'm a survivor of long-term abuse, of 10 years of very severe childhood physical, sexual, psychological abuse. And one of my side effects of that is that I have a dangerously high pain threshold where I ignore, our pain is our body telling us, stop, pay attention, we need to change something, we need to shift something. I was ignoring it. I ignored it for too long, and I'm lucky that I was on the road with Brandy Carlisle and that she was on the road with a brilliant vocal coach, but he's not just a vocal coach. I really call him, he's like a healer. He's a vocal therapist, really, and named Rob Stevenson, and he's here with Dave Matthews this weekend because Brandy met Rob through Dave. And Rob just knew, hearing me and seeing me, that something was wrong, very wrong. And I had an intervention. Because he intervened in time, I only had to go on a couple of weeks of total silence and vocal rest. I didn't have to get surgery. But if I had continued on the path I was on, I would have destroyed my voice and shortened my career, if not ended it. And so I had a timely intervention, and that's why I get to be here with all of you this weekend and able to speak and able to sing, was because of an intervention from people in my community who reached out and saw that I was struggling. And I'm so wildly grateful for that. But I think what I would say is we all have that inner voice of intuition, and we all hear messages from our limbic system, our bodies. Our bodies are always processing things before our minds do. And we are trained in our culture, I think, in our kind of brag about how many hours of work you did and how little sleep you got, and that's sort of the productivity over quality kind of mentality that we've had. That is, by the way, part of why we're in a climate crisis, because that same kind of extractive productivity, bottom line, exponentially increasing profit forever and ever, never mind the fact that we're on a finite planet with finite resources, that is creating these depredations on our planet, and it's also horribly impacting our mental health, our physical health, the way we treat. It's rapidly, I think, pushing us towards a mass extinction. And I know that sounds extreme, but I think that's what we're fighting right now. It is all hands on deck to reverse these depredations of our planet, which are reflected in the depredations within our own bodies and within our own minds and consciousness. So, yeah.
Something that someone said to me once about their own experience in seeking help, and is that actually there's a lot of strength in saying, I need to lean on someone else. That in fact, the stronger thing is to say, you know what, I can't do this alone, or my body is literally telling me I need to stop. And that is actually the true act of bravery. That is actually the true act of ultimate strength to do that. And I know, Marvin, that you have also had to have that moment and lean on other people. And as a farmer, as a veteran, you, I think, have a unique perspective on what it means to be a farmer or a veteran and say, kind of like what Allison was describing, I need to stop, I need to take a step back, I need to kind of reset and recenter myself. What was kind of that experience for you?
My aha moment for me was finally realizing how dark it was. I was becoming very passive aggressive, very angry at the smallest things that really, it didn't have any weight on it at all, but I was looking for an excuse. And that was just way too much, be carrying that much of a burden on me. And so I had to reach out for help. Coming from out of special operations, I call myself a lion, and having a thorn in my paw is the way I consider that. So about having a thorn in my paws are too big for me to get it out by myself, so I have to ask someone to help me get it out. It's hard to finally say that you need help with something in anything in life, but I must say it's okay. Once you do it, you'd be surprised of how many people are surrounding you and in your corner to help you seek the yes.
Amen.
Could I speak to that for a minute, too?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I'm thinking about that from the frame of what we hear from farmers in our experience. I mean, farmers are famously are independent. You know, they pride themselves in how hard you work, and that you don't need help. And I guess there's just a couple things I would say that are good to be aware of. And one of them is there is no right time to get help. You know, you get help when you're feeling cruddy. It doesn't mean necessarily you have a mental illness. It may just be a couple sessions. But it doesn't mean that you're going to be in therapy for the rest of your life. So I just want to clarify that. And I guess the other thing I would say is that farmers are often, they're dealing with so many things beyond their control. But somehow I think you feel like you should be able to control it. And I do understand that oftentimes what's really driving a lot of the depression is blaming ourselves, self-blame. So I would just put that out there and encourage you to reach out anytime to whoever you trust to get help. Yeah.
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
I just think, as we were discussing this, the overlap with everything, we use words like intersectionality, and I think sometimes people just shut off when they hear what they think of as sort of like a PC word or that means nothing. But all that it means is there's this overlap between all of our interconnectedness and our identities, and that sometimes our identities mean there are a lot more barriers to having the resources that we need to thrive. And that's like at its simplest level, I think how I could put it. And what I've been hearing over and over again during the press conference today, from what each of you have been saying, there is just a lack of resources for the kind of small family farm, regenerative farming, climate resilient farming, climate affected farming. We don't have resources in place for this. And so I think in this, I do have to bring it back to what we can do collectively. We're in an election cycle. These are critical. It's just critical that we vote, that we use our voices and our votes, those of us who have them. I am someone living in this country who is a new immigrant, I have a green card and I pay my taxes here and my daughter's here. I have a small business and I employ Americans. Everyone on my team is American that I employ. So I'm part of the economy, but I can't vote because I'm not yet a citizen. And I just think about these issues. It is so critically important that we have candidates that support not just sustainable farming, but resources for the farmers who have been depredated by the climate change fueled by our toxic practices, extractive toxic practices that we have globally, but certainly, as the kind of most influential, I would say, country of the kind of Western world, that we have a responsibility to be the change, I do think that, and I think that we can do it together. I think that we can support those candidates who are going to radically reimagine how we support our farmers, and instead of subsidizing monoculture corporate farms that are literally pumping carbon dioxide into the air, we can be supporting, Briarwood cattle farm. We can be supporting Levity farm. We can be supporting grass grazed farm. Like all of these incredible farmers that are here, that all of you here today. I just think it's so hopeful and so exciting, and so I can't wait for March 6th, 2023, because I'm going to rally everyone I know and bring my kid and, just head to Washington on the resilient, sustainable farmer freedom riding buses for this conference, I'm so excited.
You are literally who she is talking about. I mean, she called you out specifically. We're all consumers. I'm sure many of us are here to have a good time, but there's also some lessons that we can learn. What is like that one thing you want folks to take away from today, and how does it feel to hear so much support to sort of propel you and continue you into the future and hopefully the generations that come after you?
Phenomenal. And I want to say thank you for that too as well.
I want to say thank you to you, saving the planet and feeding us all. Thank you.
Thank you. There's one part for the takeaway that you're referring to is something that's very important is the word reprisal. The word reprisal of what someone else is thinking of you as you're doing something is one of the main weights that we carry for mental health. But also self-reprisal is the biggest one. And that's the one that I, Marvin, deal with. That's my first time ever saying that I publicly deal with is a self-reprisal because I don't want to fail. Coming from the military, the word yes is what we know for a long time. So that's 28 years of me saying yes, or making something happen is yes. But when you get out of the military, you hear the words no, denial, and rejection. And I'm not used to hearing that. And that's also one of the main things that farmers slash veterans deal with as well, is that word no, denial, and rejection. Don't get someone confused with anger and being confused with, and it looks exactly the same. They're just trying to find the yes. And see if we can help someone out with just trying to seek the yes with some good resources. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
That was great. All right. Final thoughts. I'll start with you, Lori, and then if Marvin and Allison, there's anything you wanted to add. They're giving me the wrap it up, Tomas. So before I get in trouble, final thoughts. We'll start with you.
I think what we hear is the most consistent message from our farmers is thank you for listening. And you just kind of take that almost as thank you for seeing me. Thank you for taking the time to recognize I'm here. And that means so much because so many farmers are, a lot of what they encounter is transactional and bureaucracy. And go there and then go there. Oh, who told you that? You need to go there. So I guess I would just encourage people to see your farmers for what they are, to listen to them, try to understand some of these things they're struggling with. And on that note, our Farm Aid Hotline team is right there, and we are happy to visit with anybody who's looking for assistance with pretty much anything that has to do with farming. Yeah.
Amazing.
My takeaway would be farmers are cultivators, and they cultivate with love. And with them cultivating with love, they just want to be appreciated. Just want to be appreciated and valued for the work that they're doing. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. Just want to be appreciated and valued. So love, appreciation, a value, cultivation, dropping the seed of faith with a smile on it. So that's who farmers are.
I have to say that being part of this community, it's my second year here, has been so uplifting and also personally transformational for me and my family in terms of our buying practices, because we live in an urban setting. We are dependent on farmers and on truck drivers bringing us the food into the city and everything. But I really took home last year how important our dollar vote is, what Margo was talking about during the press conference, that we vote with our dollars every single day, and we can change those habits anytime, and it's never too late or too early to begin to change those habits. And that's what my family and I have been trying to do. We've been going to our farmers markets much, almost exclusively in the recent times, and we're just trying to get better at voting with our dollars to support farmers, to show the love to the farmers who are helping heal our planet. So I'm just so grateful for the incredibly hard and often thankless work that y'all are engaged in, the labor of love. We're so grateful. And I feel it, I see it, I hear it, and I see the difference in my child now eating beautifully grown food with love. So I'm very grateful.
I'll end by saying I think I speak for everybody up here and for folks in the audience, and if you're also a farmer in the audience, I think I speak by saying we see you, we appreciate you, we thank you for coming up here and sharing your experience with all of us, because I know that is very personal, and I know that for some folks, just hearing someone else talk about their own journey could inspire them to change the path of their journey for the better. So thank you. Thank you all for staying. and listening to this conversation. Our next session is at 2:30, and if you want to know our full schedule, it's on the chalkboard right here. And those of you standing over here, you guys can sit in the audience. There's no rule that says you have to stay out there once it starts. Let's give our incredible group of... Thank you.